ahead and start the recording. I'll mute everybody and we'll get started. Rob, you have anything you want to get started here with this morning before we
No, Dave, thank you.
let Bruce get going? Okay, it's up to Bruce.
Oh, come on. So, am I audible, readable, hearable?
Yes.
Cool. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the actually scheduled, regularly scheduled ARES meeting for the month of September. I am going to do this vicariously and remotely like we did last month. If everybody will indulge, if you have your hats on, remove your cover, remove your hats. We are going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Please. And I know it sounds a little weird when we do this, and I do stand myself, even though you can't see me standing. But, and I know it's going to be a little awkward with latency and the internet, but we're going to do this anyway. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation
under
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
and
for all.
justice for all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I already heard mention about new introductions. Let's go ahead and take care of that.
You want a picture on?
Nah. Or you want to do our...
So if our new folks would introduce themselves, Rob, you want to pick them off? That would be great. Or Dave, as the case might be.
Yeah, if the new people could raise their hand or wave in front of their camera or shut out their call sign or something.
We have a Tim, KJ6 LHV.
Good morning, this is Tim, KJ6 LHV from Lemon Grove. Glad to be here.
And your interest in ARES, if you wouldn't mind, why you're here, why you've joined the party.
Rekindling my interest in ham radio, especially with all the fires. And I had a friend recently give me a phone call and piqued my interest again. So I'm here.
As we all are. Very good. Thank you and welcome aboard. Here's the clap.
That might be all.
Okay, very good. So we have a contest weekend ahead of us. We like to take advantage of these events when they come up a few times during the year to do a couple of things. Number one, we like to check our radios out. We want to make sure things are working, performing as expected. Sometimes when you lead up to an event like this, like I am doing right now, you find that you've got things that you thought were working that you don't use frequently or regularly. And sometimes you find that they're not quite working the way you expect them to. So it's always a good time and investment, and certainly an opportunity to go out and tune up your gear, so to speak, check your gear out. And also when the gear is working correctly, you have an opportunity to get on the air and actually do things without repeaters, which is sometimes challenging. And we like to joke about this, but on a contest weekend, it's often organized chaos depending on how busy the weekend is. The September event is typically not very busy from the perspective of a lot of traffic on the air, but effectively for those that haven't done this before, we like to take advantage of this. We have rally times that we post. We have, for the folks that are not actually really involved in the contest itself, we have opportunity times called rally times that we like to try to get on the air. And the goal is to go out and see, again, how far and how well your gear works in the event that there's not a repeater available. Sometimes things like this will happen. Sometimes power will go out. Sometimes fires will actually burn through a site and basically take an entire site offline. And that includes sometimes TV transmitters, radio transmitters, repeaters for us, and repeaters for law enforcement, fire, and other government and non-government entities, which is very painful when you're trying to go out and make sure that you're providing disaster and emergency communication to an area that might have just lost it. So what we're trying to do with an event like this is ourselves as ARES see who we can communicate to. One of the goals is always to make sure that the folks that are the emergency coordinators can reach the folks that are in their area. So if people are up in Oceanside and they've got an emergency coordinator up in Oceanside, we'd like to go out and make sure that the Oceanside folks on at least one or more bands on simplex without a repeater are able to reach out and contact reliably the person that's in charge of that particular area. And obviously, once we've done things like that, then we want to see if those folks can reach into other areas. Depending on where you're at, geography, topology, and other things will come into play. Depending on what time of day it is, you'll often find, depending on what band you're on, that you've got a little bit of enhancement. Suddenly, someone's signal is better than it was later in the afternoon, or the day before, or the evening before. And it's not an uncommon thing to go out and have the morning hours. We're kind of getting to be later in the morning, but on a Sunday morning, as an example, it's very realistic to go out and work people, depending on where you're at, all the way up in the Santa Barbara, if they're on the air, and if conditions are good. On a regular, 40, 50 watt VHF, UHF radio, like most of us have. The event, without boring everybody to tears, Rob sent email out on. It's got a lot of the instructions on it. It's got a lot of the information that we keep grooming and refining event after event. If you are going to be on the air, here's what I would encourage you to do. The initial rounds when the event kicks off could be busy. And when I say busy, I don't mean hundreds of people. Maybe dozens of people would probably be a good gas gauge and probably very realistic, not counting us. We have a lot of folks and we have a lot of participants that play in this. So it's actually kind of a cool deal for us. The goal will be to go out and log who you can hear, log their grid square, log the time in GMT, not local time. And if you do it in local time, please make sure you convert it to GMT correctly. It's really hard to do after the fact for a lot of folks. And then what band you were on and what mode. So if you're running on FM, that's great. If you're running sideband, that's great. If you're running digital, for a few of us that have digital capabilities in some of the bands, make sure you're logging it correctly there too in WSJT or whatever other mode you're running in. When it starts up and when there are busy periods, it's not a good time. And I learned this, I won't tell you how many decades ago, but I learned this a long, long time ago. You will want to keep the transmissions short and sweet. Make sure that you've made contact with the other station. Try to avoid conflicts. Wait your turn if you need to wait your turn, or be patient as the case might be, because as you might imagine, the simplex frequencies, 146.52, 146.55 in particular, are going to get very busy. And part of the problem that you'll find is that, unlike a repeater and also like a repeater, there will be times when multiple people are keying up at the same time trying to communicate with somebody else. And when you're working with FM, you will more than likely get the closest station to you. That'll be the loudest, and that'll be the one that you hear. You might hear other people in the background or underneath that carrier. That's pretty normal. And where I'm going with this is make sure that you're really contacting the person you're trying to contact. There will be times when folks will hear someone calling CQ and maybe 3 or 4 people respond. And unless both parties are saying, as we used in the example, KG6IYN for K6RJF or K6RJF please copy me, ... I want to make sure I'm acknowledging the call sign and that the other party is acknowledging the fact that they've received. What we hear very often is someone thinking that they're talking to someone, they put their call sign out there. You'll hear someone say, yep, I've got you, S9 and Delta Mike 13. And there might be 5 or 6 people hearing that, and they don't know that they're necessarily the contact that's being made. So really important that both parties keep it short, keep it sweet. That way you've got some layer of efficiency in getting this done. Get the conversation done. Let the 1 or 2 people that are working a lot of folks work a lot of folks. Then as they've worked whatever layer that they have or group that they have, other folks might get in there and do the same exact thing. So that puts some semblance of order into it and maybe lessens the frustration. And please don't be frustrated, because it really is kind of a free-for-all, especially with FM. You know, a good example that I have is I can hear people well in the Santa Barbara. I can work people in Riverside. I can hear a lot of folks that are out there. And it's also very realistic that maybe someone's hearing you, but they aren't making it back, because that'll also happen. I've had cases where I've had somebody up in Big Bear on a 5-watt handheld, and we've worked them down here in San Diego. And that's just because conditions are allowing that to happen. On any other day, a 5-watt handheld in Big Bear up on a fire lookout may not work all the way in San Diego. So again, super important that you're identifying by call sign. You're recognizing both parties when you're doing your exchange, like we've given in the example that Rob emailed out. And again, keep it short and sweet. It's not the best time. And again, I learned this X number of decades ago, which I won't share with you. I learned this especially at the end of the events. Everybody's desperate to go out and get 1 or 2 last contacts. Sometimes toward the end of the event, you know, people are getting on the air just to go out and pass out contacts or points. And when you're doing that, that's really not the time to be having a QSO on one of the frequencies. And that used to be something that even the folks that were proficient and regular contesters would really fall in the habit of doing, especially if they were a rover. People would, in the last hours of a contest or an event, very candidly, they'd start breaking out in the QSOs. Hey, I haven't talked to you in 5 months, and how you doing? What's going on? I'm in my rover and I'm heading back to Pasadena, and we're almost there and we're 5 miles out. And now we've got people having what I would consider to be a repeater type conversation in the midst of an event where you're supposed to be making contacts. I know Megahertz knows that that happens. He's heard that happen lots of times. He's been out there a long time. Other folks might have experienced that too. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you got the luxury, you've got more than one radio, maybe we have those kinds of conversations and chit chat about how we did, what we're doing, what's going on, maybe on a repeater frequency or maybe on DMR or something else that's running in the background. Speaking of which, I'll turn on my Moto Turbo Mobile. So I've got that running. I wasn't even thinking about that till I said it. So I've got my DMR radio up and running. That's probably best done there. We want to keep things short, sweet, simple in the contact arena, especially when the busier times happen. And again, make sure you're establishing both sets of contacts. If you're going to move to another frequency, let folks know that you're going to move to another frequency. And sometimes if, as an example, 146.52 is busy, lots of folks are on, maybe take advantage of jumping up the UHF, go to 446.000 if you've got FM. Maybe go down to 6 meter simplex, go somewhere else and, let the folks that you've given the frequency to or are running the frequency at that time an opportunity to go out and do that. Maybe just check another band and get some contacts in. Probably a good time. I know that was kind of the speed and the lightning round, but it really kind of is that condensed with the information that we put out via email and the guidelines that are there. That pretty much should answer any questions, but let's open it up for questions. And if you wouldn't mind, Dave, if you could moderate, if people have their hands up or people have questions, that would be great.
So far none, John. CPO just posted a thing in chat, a nice conversion chart that makes it easy to go from local time to GMT.
And really super important, if you're really going to turn your logs in, and this does happen a lot, if you're really going to turn your logs in for contest credit or at least recognition, even if you're not going to win an award, really important again that you have the exchange correct. You have the mode that you were running. So you're either running CW, you're running phone, which is voice, you're running digital, which is digital, whatever mode it is, as well as the time of the contact. If they're looking at logs and they're comparing logs and someone has that GMT conversion wrong and it's an hour off, that basically ends up in what they call a busted queue or a broken QSO. And they typically will not recognize or give you points or credit for that. And then both sides basically lose. So it's not a win-win, it becomes a lose-lose. And if you're, like I say, you're turning in a log for recognition, that's definitely a place that you don't want to be. And
We have a question out there now,
NA6MB,
Bruce.
yeah, NA6MB, go ahead.
Yes. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So one of the tips that about getting the call right is that what I do in the contest is I don't give the exchange that the person wants until they give me their call. So if they're not calling me, I call them again. And if they say, I already talked to you, or, you know, they get frustrated, well, then you can say, well, you didn't call me. So then maybe you correct them, their situation a little bit, their operating style a little bit too, and then not give the information that they need until you get the information that you need.
That's a good strategy. I agree. And for the folks that are seasoned, it's usually a little easier for those folks. And you brought up another good point as well. For the folks that are logging on paper, this can easily get a little confusing or overwhelming. So don't be surprised if you hear someone say to you, if you're logging on paper, we've already worked. What I would recommend that you do is take a quick look at your log to make sure you really have, because sometimes they might have your call sign wrong, which is why they called you again, because they've logged you incorrectly. And I know that I got to be honest, there's a lot of times that I will have entered the call sign correctly.
Papa, Signal Hill is testing.
There's a lot of times that I will 23 radio from Signal Hill. That's awesome. Sorry about that. I had the radio squelched, didn't know I had the volume up. There's a lot of times that folks may log it correctly, but read it back wrong. And I do that occasionally. I'll read it back phonetically wrong, or I'll twist a couple of digits and the read back will be wrong, but someone will give me the correction and I'll look at the log and go, yeah, I got you right in the log, but I read it back at a glance incorrectly. My bad. If somebody
Bruce?
said,
Bruce?
if somebody, yeah.
So I don't know why anybody would log on paper these days. I mean, there's so many logging programs for phones and pads and laptops and everything else. I guess if that's all you have, but it's really much better to log it on a computer, because then it puts down the band you set it to be in, if it's not tracking your radio, and the time in UTC correctly.
And while I agree with that, I know we got a lot of new folks out there that might actually be doing this for the first time, and they may not have gotten quite as far as getting that logging software set up. And that's another really great point that you're touching on, Mike, as well, because as you mentioned, if you've got everything automated, you've got integration with your radio, then the software knows what band you're on, what band you've changed to, if you've made a modification, and kept that information. Some folks may be using their logging software without that. And in fact, I would expect for a lot of our folks, that might be the norm rather than the exception. So it's also very important when you're doing that to make sure if you change bands from 2 meters to 440 or 440 to 6, or wherever you happen to go, that you are also in the logging software, making sure that you're logging for the right band and for the right mode of operation. Because if you go from phone to digital, you have an issue there too if it's done wrong. Because again, if you're turning it in for points and you're turning it in for recognition or whatever the case might be, that ends up being the busted queue scenario again. Got to be
Right.
careful of that.
Yeah, we
And
have
the
another
other-
hand up.
Yeah, one other hand. And the other thing is, again, on the dupes, if somebody's not sure that you're in the log, rather than argue about it and debate about it and arm wrestle over it and look at it, I look at Mike nodding his head, go ahead and log the duplicate anyway and just flag it, and whatever contact you might have had previously, I just pull that one out of the log. I just take the latest one. I don't worry about it. You'll spend more time trying to look up the dupe or arm wrestling with somebody else. Take the contact, move on, and just keep going. Now,
And most contests don't count dupes against you anyway, so just leave it in the log. Check the rules.
Well, I agree, but if you're working with a logging software package like N3FJP, it's going to say it's a dupe, and unless you force it to take it, it won't. It'll reject the actual contact. So you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, move along rather than spend 5 minutes stressing yourself out, and just do it over again and keep going. Okay, the other hand that was up, the other question.
Jay, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I have one radio automated control, one radio not, and I will absolutely underscore, be real careful if you switch bands to make sure you get it right. I have spent lots of time going back through the log to change the band, change the mode, to make sure that it was what it was supposed to be. So keep an eye out for that one.
Yes, indeed. So megahertz is going to win this contest, right?
I don't know. I've got to chase the Route 66.
Yeah, well, when you work Whiskey 6 Foxtrot, say, hey, I worked you guys at field day. See what they say. That's always good for fun. They usually bristle about that. For those that don't know, we borrow that call sign, which is a vanity call and a special contest call, if you will, for field day for ARES. And we've had folks that sponsor the Route 66 event ping us occasionally and say, yeah, we got people wanting QSL cards for field day and it wasn't us. So yeah, they run the entire series. They run the Whiskey 6 like A through whatever it happens to be, all 21 or 22 stops or whatever it happens to be that they're out there doing things. So that's always interesting. They get our correspondence later in the year. It's a much bigger event for them. They've run regularly. We just happen to use one of the call signs in that series for field day. Any other questions?
Nothing up right now. If you have a question, put your hand up and we'll catch you in a pause here.
And I'm not watching the chat window, by the way.
I haven't seen anything else pop up.
Cool. So about a half an hour or so, 31 minutes or so, 32, 33 minutes. This would be a really good time, everybody, to, good grief. I was going to say, for those that have not done this before and you've got a computer, this would be a super good time to get your logging software running. If you don't already have it running, make sure it's going. And just like I looked at on my digital computer for my 6-meter radio, I just saw a notification saying that Windows updates are ready. and I will share with you that while I've had wildly successful luck, with the exception of one particular update that was problematic that they've kicked out, I've not really had any issues. But what I have noticed is that when I've got updates that are pending, and anything in that update has to do with the operating system and the peripherals, that suddenly when I go out and try to run WSJT, the software will come up fine, but I will enable transmit, or I will hit the tune button to go out and make sure things are working correctly, and my rig interface between the radio and the computer suddenly doesn't work. And everything's working the way it's supposed to, but it's not transmitting, it's not doing whatever. In fact, it's not receiving either. And once the update is completed, then everything's back to normal. So I've run into that a few times, and while I've got the other laptop running, the 2-meter up to 1296 stuff up and running, and it's been updated, I just, like I say, jokingly looked over and said, and you might want to consider checking your machine, because the last thing you want to do is have a Windows update interrupt you right in the middle of something that you're doing.
Or a sound card.
Or have it
Sound
pending.
card doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, not a good thing. So with that, I don't have anything else. Everybody's got the instructions, the directions, whatever else. Like I said, keep it short and simple. And it might make the most sense for our group, especially, to let someone that is in a good place or in a good spot and they've got a good signal and lots of people can hear them, let them run the band, as we like to call it, or run the frequency, and let them work through the layers that they've got, and then let somebody else jump in and do the same thing. And maybe just, if we do that in rotation, we can get this done pretty expeditiously. But I mean, even with 30, 40, 50 ARES folks and 3 or 4 bands at a minimum that most people have, we should have a lot of contacts in our logs. But more importantly, much more importantly, unless you're somewhere outside of Reno, Nevada, everybody should pretty much be able to go out and work their group, their local area, their EC, etc. And then optimally, they should be able to go out and work outside that local group, outside that local area, and maybe to other ECs or to myself or to Dave or to Rob later when he's back on. Again, this is our opportunity to really wring the gear out, figure out what we can do better with the radio, with the antenna, things like that in general. And again, band conditions will change, especially for those that are closer to the coast as the day goes on. And usually for us, you'll be very surprised that UHF simplex will work again, sometimes as far up as Santa Barbara, usually easily into Oxnard. And that'll stay that way until 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. Toward about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, things will start to change on UHF, especially, and you'll start seeing those signals degrade.
This is N6GP, Signal Hill.
So with that, sorry about that again. People are testing their radios, as we should probably be doing as well. I'm going to say we can leave the session up, Dave, if you want to. At least initially, it's at your call. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot that we can do interactively, but maybe we can leave this up for a few minutes afterwards and let it run.
I can leave it up here for another 10, 15 minutes. And if people have questions or they're trying to check something, pop back in here.
Sounds good. So with that, I will put myself on mute anyway. I will look for raised hands periodically. And good luck to everybody in the endeavor. Again, most of this is not related to contesting for us. Really, it's about making sure we can reach out and talk to people, relay traffic, make sure that we've got the right band, because sometimes maybe you'll find out that UHF works better than 2 meters does. For some folks, maybe you'll find out that 220's got a better path than some other band. That's part of the exercise. Find out what you can do, where you can work reliably, and if things break down around us, which they will, because it's just a matter of time, things do break. When we have those impaired scenarios, we know how to go out and do what we need to do from the ARES perspective. So super important that we do this, and it doesn't require a lot of time. That's what the rally hours are there for. I see your hat, Pat, your hand, Pat. So you don't need to be on for the entire event. You know, go out and congregate on the rally times and see if we can go out and work other folks that might have had the opportunity to stop in. One of the parts about this that's good is it runs until 8 o'clock tomorrow night. So there's lots of time in here. You don't have to go out and dedicate your day to it. You can check in periodically. And again, I encourage folks to check mornings, afternoons, early evening, because conditions will change. And maybe we'll even get a little tiny bit of a 6 meter opening somewhere, because that's been known to happen. It will occasionally during September. So with that, Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, contrary to popular opinion, sometimes paper just works better than computers, because paper doesn't have the problem of the blue screen of death, which happens quite frequently on my laptop downstairs.
I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe you can blame that on Penelope. When you let your cat run FT8, you're going to get the blue screen of death every once in a while.
Yep.
Any other questions before we jump off? or go into standby mode.
Just another comment about logging. I have done paper logging in the past year also, actually. It was an interesting situation. We were on a road trip last summer, and coming across Wyoming, I had a HF radio in the car. I had a 20-meter antenna on, and I worked the NAQP SSB contest while Gail was driving down the expressway. So I had to log that on paper.
Awesome.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, some
right,
of us just don't type well enough to do computer logging on the fly. My thing is paper logging and then transfer it to the computer as soon as I possibly can.
Well, my deal usually is, especially when there's a lot of folks out there, and I know Mike and a few other folks can attest to this, you know, the typing skills are good, but, you know, we're not going to have, I don't expect that we're going to have for this event what we consider to be pile-up conditions, where you're out there calling CQ and suddenly you've got a half a dozen stations or more coming back to you more or less at the same time. I don't expect that to happen. You know, if you do have that happen, you know, generally for me, and this doesn't have to be a pile-up scenario, but maybe when you've got a lot of folks responding, on my side, I will try to take the person, wow, hey folks, on 6 meters, we've got somebody that's actually live in DM02. If you don't have Delta Mike 02 on your grid square map.
Guy out in San Clemente.
Yep, he's been out there before. He makes runs out there to various things, so that's kind of cool. He's not posted as rover, so there's someone out in DM02 if you need a DM02 for your 6 meter map. If you're in a pile-up condition, if you get a lot of folks responding to you, my typical thing is I'm going to go out and take the weakest signal first, or the weakest or hardest one to read first, not the strongest. That may sound counterintuitive, but for folks that are out there fringe, if the conditions are in, if someone's mobile, if someone's a rover, I want to work those people first because I may not have an opportunity to go back. And the folks that are generally stronger or local are going to be there, and you can just kind of gas gauge what you need to go out and do from a priority perspective. So that's usually my rule of thumb. If I've got multiples coming back and responding, I'm going to try to weed through the worst one first. Maybe it's someone on a handheld and they're 10 miles away, but at least get those folks taken care of, because again, you may not have the opportunity to go out and do it. So that's sort of the way my brain prioritizes that. And as far as the typing goes, as far as paper goes, I got to be honest, when I hear someone calling me and I'm responding to them, or I'm calling CQ and they're returning, I'm usually typing the call sign as I'm reading it back, which is where I get into that weird scenario. And I almost always type it correctly. I very rarely make a mistake, as I've learned, but I will sometimes read it back, which is weird. It's kind of like brain dyslexia. The fingers are typing the right thing, but the mouth is looking at that and trying to remember what someone said, and I'm saying it wrong on the return. It's not that I do that very often, but out of all the things that I do that are just goofy little mistakes and gotchas, that's the one that I do.
All right, we did have another question in there from Mike, AJ6GK.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Trying to unmute this thing, sorry. No, I just had a little confusion between the rally time and the limits of the contest. But I guess the rally times are the starts. And like I say, for one it's 6 p.m. and then you said that the contest runs to 8. So is that how I understand it? The rally time could be at 6 and you start transmitting then?
That's generally when the rally time is generally when we want to encourage people, if they've got the opportunity to be on the air.
Right,
It affords everyone the best chance of working other folks. You can jump on any time that you want to. There's no rule about, and there's no other guideline about, but we just thought that it might be convenient if people are looking at their schedule for the day. They've got chores they've got to do. They've got shopping they've got to do. They've got family things they've got to take care of. you know, and you're worried about missing a group of people, maybe you will, maybe you won't, but at least we're trying to condense or provide a suggested guideline when people might want to check in, get on the radio and congregate rather than have to wait the entire time to go out and bump into people.
The other question I had was on logging software. Again, kind of agree with megahertz on this. Paper sometimes is more practical. Let's say if I'm out in the field, is there, even if you have a tablet, is there good software that you can carry, hike up to a mountaintop and use without internet?
Absolutely.
Which one is it?
You have an iPad, you could use Mac Logger DX, I think is what it's called.
M-A-T logger?
No, Mac, M-A-C.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Mac Logger DX makes it for both Mac OS and for iOS.
Okay. So
I
if I have
haven't used the iOS one, but the one on the laptop works pretty well. Although I've yet to be able to get it to do a contact coverage map.
And you don't need internet or a phone connection to the tablet?
It helps because it will, when you type in the call sign, it will tell you who it is and their location by looking it up online. But it's not, I don't believe it's required. I typically use mine with a connection, but I don't think it's required.
All right, I'll take a look at it because I don't have any connection with my tablet. I don't know if maybe on an iPhone it could work, but that's awful tiny to use out in the field. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions this morning? All right. With nothing else going on, we're going to go ahead and basically close this down, but I'm just going to let it run for a little while and see if anybody has any questions pop up, and we'll see if somebody can answer it for you. Thanks, Bruce, for your information this morning, and thanks everybody for showing up.
Thank you for hosting this. Appreciate it.
Everyone go have fun and be successful today. That's the whole goal, is to go out and have fun with this, learn from it. It is absolutely not the goal to be frustrated. Although that could happen. Some people will get frustrated. Please don't. Bear with it. If you can't get a word in edgewise because people are dominating the frequency, believe me when I tell you, sometimes patience, although a virtue, will win out every time. And again, maybe if one frequency or one band is particularly busy, maybe that's a good time to go out and check another band and just move on to something else, come back and revisit the other band that was congested and work through the pile. You know, these little surges of folks that will happen, and I call them little, the surges of folks that'll happen usually, you know, at the starting gun, if it's 11 o'clock, you're going to have about an hour initially where folks are very interactive, jumping from band to band, trying to work contacts from point A to point B. If they're a rover, they're going to try to work as many people in a particular grid square while they are in a certain grid square before they move on as possible. There will be, just like I say, surges of traffic, but there will also be plenty of time and lull time and null time in between to go out and work on things, maybe work the weaker signals, play with some antennas if you've got them, things like that. You'll have those opportunities, but don't get frustrated because suddenly it's congested and weird. Just kind of roll with it and things will be okay. I promise.
All right, we've got a couple hands up here. Jay?
So Bruce, from the standpoint of the rules, if I have all mode 6 meters, is there an advantage to working FM only and entering FM only, or is it just go for it, whatever I can get on 6 meters, FT8 and what have you, as well as the FM on 220 and on 2 meters and 440?
Yeah, and that's part of what everybody should be thinking about if they're going to trim the login, is what they're going to be doing for strategy. If you're really going to play FM only, then I would not encourage you to play digital. There are and I'm fuzzy a little bit on how the ARRL has started doing this. But as an example, if you were entering as the 3-band category, which is 6 meters, 2 meters, and 440 only, but you have other bands that you've worked people on. Let's say you got 220, you've got 902 or 927, you've got 1296. The ARRL will allow you to enter in the 3-band category and submit the additional log for the other bands effectively as check logs. So other people will get credit for working you, but that's not the category that you're actually entered in. I'm really fuzzy on how that would work if you were going digital, and I don't think they would do it if you're running digital plus entering as an FM only category. I don't think they'll allow that.
I do not know. I haven't looked into that either. They've changed a lot of that around in the last few years, so I'm not sure.
Right.
Usually I've gone out and just tried to do whatever I can, just mostly to have fun. But every once in a while, the rules thing comes to mind, and I wonder what's optimal there, and thought you guys might know. You guys might have done the homework that I haven't.
Unfortunately, not this time. Mike, another question?
Yeah, I think Jay was the one that came up with this thing called Mac Logger. There's nothing like that in the App Store. There's a thing called Ham Logger, H-A-M. Is that the one?
No, go to dogparksoftware.com. Go to the website.
There is a Mac Logger on the Apple Store. There's a Mac Logger DX for $40. So it's on there.
That would be it.
I'm not seeing it.
$40.
One word, Mac Logger?
Yeah, probably.
It's not showing up.
MACLOGGERDX HD.
Oh, let me try DX at the end of that. No, nothing.
Just ham logging software then.
But when I do Ham Logger, it comes up. That's the only thing that comes up, and it's highly rated. It's about 99 cents.
Ham Logger software, and it give me about 5 different things to try to select from. Mac Logger DX is one of them.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Dave.
Is it over?
It's still.
Yeah, I just get one. It may be because maybe I got a 5S here. Maybe that's the only one it's able to use. It's an old iPad or an iPhone. Thanks.
Hey, Dave. Dave?
Yeah, say Jim.
Yeah. Could you do me a favor and shoot me the thing that Rob put out? For some reason, for some months now, I've been off his address list. So could you shoot that about the contest today? Thank you.
Yeah.
I sent him an email to try and fix that. So hopefully that won't be an interrupt in the future.
All right.
Thanks.
Neither Gail nor I got the rally times email, so I don't know if that was sent.
I will try and I'll post it up on the Google I/O site again, and I'll send it to Jim because I don't know if he's on there.
Okay.
Oh, another thing about the computer software is when you're trying to run WSJTX with a logging program, that really fills the screen, makes the screen very busy. And you got to have a large monitor to see all that at once, unless you have 2 monitors or 2 computers, one to just do the logging and one to do the WSJTX. I found that it's nearly impossible. So if you just use the computer for WSJTX or FT8, that's another reason for paper.
All right, I just posted the Rob's email to the Google I/O groups again, and I sent it to Jim and to Mike directly. So hopefully everybody will get it. If you don't, let me know and I'll send it out again.
Ten minutes till the contest starts.
And we got about 10 minutes yet before it starts, but I'm hearing people on 2 meters and 220 already. So getting a little early start.
I've got to go over to Elks, so we'll see what's happening when I get back.
All right, sounds good. Just gonna let this thing run for about another 4 or 5 minutes and then we'll shut it down. And if anybody doesn't, if nobody has any questions, we'll just shut it down now. Somebody in chat here. Yeah, that MacLogger DX, I found it in the App Store as well for an iPad, and it's $40.
Hey, Dave, while I got you on here, it's indicating standing out in the driveway with an HT. Is this HT only?
No, it's just VHF on it, VHF, UHF.
Got it. Thank you.
It's just the only thing is no repeaters.
Well, you know what I always say, repeaters are highly overrated. They are a luxury. When they're available, they're wonderful, but I never, ever, ever plan anything communications-wise around a repeater because everything is convenient. Nets are convenient. Phone and auto patches, which almost don't exist anymore, were convenient. Anyway, I was chatting in the background while we were wrapping up. There are people stretched pretty much up and down the coast in the Santa Barbara that are either mobile or rovers. So I would expect that at least on 2 meters and 440, some of our folks, if not several of our folks that have stations closer to the coast in particular, should have some good luck there. It'll just be testament to the fact that the gear will work under certain circumstances, maybe in a way that you weren't expecting.
It could be a lot of fun. Like I say, I was listening on there. There's still some people coming in up the coast, so could be a fun day.
The only thing that I didn't mention, and I'm being very serious about this, I forgot. The only thing that I didn't mention was the squelch knob.
2 meters sideband here when the contest starts.
Some people will run with the squelch up, and you will miss a lot of stations that are out there that are right on the edge of the noise level. And I forgot to say that, but that's okay. We can talk about that on the air.
All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and close this down so everybody can get their radios on and get them warmed up. And I will get this posted, get this to Rob so he can post it, and everybody can listen to it again at their leisure.
Tally ho.
Thanks everybody for being there, and we will talk to everybody later.
Thanks. Bye, guys.